My name is Rebecca Anderson, and for the last 8 years, I've been living two completely separate lives. In one life, I'm the disappointment daughter. The one who wasted her economics degree on a boring government job. The one who drives a 10-year-old Honda Civic and lives in a modest apartment in Arlington, Virginia. The one my parents mention with apologetic sighs at family gatherings. In my other life, the one my family knows nothing about, I'm a senior partner at Meridian Capital Management, one of the most exclusive investment firms in Washington, D.C. I manage a portfolio worth $847 million. My personal net worth is somewhere north of $23 million. And for the past 8 years, I've been quietly, systematically funding my family's entire lifestyle. It started small. When I was 24, fresh out of Georgetown with my master's in financial economics, I landed my first real position at Meridian. My starting salary was $180,000. More money than I'd ever imagined making. Meanwhile, my parents were struggling. Dad's construction business had taken a hit during the recession, and Mom's interior design company was barely breaking even. So I helped. Anonymously at first. A wire transfer here, a payment there. Their mortgage was $3,200 a month, and I started covering it through an LLC I'd set up. When their car broke down, I arranged for a dealer promotion that covered most of the replacement cost. When my younger brother Marcus needed tuition for his MBA program, I funded a scholarship through my firm's charitable foundation. I told myself I was being strategic. I didn't want them to know about my success because I'd watched what money did to families. I'd seen clients whose children only called when they needed something. I'd witnessed bitter inheritance battles that destroyed decades of relationships. I wanted my family to love me for me, not for what I could provide. But there was another reason, one I didn't want to admit even to myself. I was testing them. Every time I visited in my old Honda, every time I wore clothes from Target, every time I mentioned my boring government spreadsheets, I was waiting to see if they'd value me without the money. I was waiting for them to ask about my life, my interests, my happiness. I was waiting for them to see me. They never did. Instead, the comparisons started. My older sister Jennifer had married a successful orthopedic surgeon. They lived in a McMansion in Bethesda, drove matching Tesla Model XS, and posted endless vacation photos from Santorini and Bali. At family dinners, Mom would show me Jennifer's Instagram like I hadn't already seen it. This is what success looks like, Rebecca. Jennifer made something of herself. My brother Marcus had used his MBA, the one I'd secretly funded, to land a position at a tech startup. When the company went public, he made $2.3 million. He bought a Porsche Taycan and a condo in Georgetown. Dad called him the family's success story right in front of me. I was the cautionary tale. The one who'd settled. The one who'd given up. The one who was almost 32 and still single, still driving that Honda, still living in that small apartment. What they didn't know was that the apartment was a strategic choice. It was a 15-minute walk from my office, which meant I could work from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. without a commute. The Honda was paid off and reliable. I didn't need to impress clients because my track record did that for me. And I was single by choice because every time I dated someone and they learned about my career, the dynamic shifted. But explaining any of that would mean revealing the truth, and I wasn't ready to do that. Not yet. Maybe not ever. By the time I turned 30, I'd been promoted to senior partner. My cut of the firm's profits alone was $3.8 million annually. I'd diversified into real estate, owned a portfolio of rental properties worth $7.2 million, and had angel investments in 12 different startups. 3 had already been acquired. My wealth was growing faster than I could spend it. So I kept helping my family. I increased my support. When Dad's construction business nearly went bankrupt in 2019, I arranged for a mysterious investor to inject $250,000 in capital through a shell company. When Mom wanted to expand her interior design business, I funded the entire renovation of her new showroom, $180,000, through an anonymous donor who believed in supporting women-owned businesses. I paid their property taxes. I covered their homeowners' insurance. When their roof needed replacing, I arranged for a warranty coverage that didn't actually exist. I paid for family vacations disguised as contest winnings that Mom was always miraculously selected for. Over 8 years, I calculated that I'd transferred $847,000 to my family. Almost $1 million. And they had no idea. Instead, they criticized me. At Thanksgiving, Mom would sigh and say, "I wish you'd been more ambitious like your siblings." At Christmas, Dad would ask when I was going to get a real career with real money. At Easter, Jennifer would offer to help me with my resume, so I could finally move up. Marcus was the worst. He'd made his millions and suddenly became a finance expert. He'd lecture me about investment strategies I'd literally written white papers on. He'd explain compound interest to me like I hadn't built my entire career on understanding it better than 99.9% of the population. He'd recommend books written by authors whose portfolios I managed. And I'd smile politely and say, "That's interesting, Marcus. I'll look into that." By 2022, something had shifted in me. I was 31 and I'd spent nearly a decade hiding my success, funding my family's lifestyle and accepting their judgment. I'd been patient. I'd been generous. I'd been invisible. And I was tired. I started documenting everything. Every wire transfer, every payment, every anonymous donation. I compiled spreadsheets. Ironic, given that's what my family thought I did all day anyway. I organized 8 years of financial records into a comprehensive portfolio that told the complete story of my support. I also hired a forensic accountant. His name was Richard Chin and he was one of the best in the business. I'd referred clients to him dozens of times and now I retained him for myself. "I need a complete audit of my family's finances," I told him. "Every account, every credit card, every loan. I want to know where every dollar came from and where it went." "Are you concerned about fraud?" Richard asked carefully. "I'm concerned about the truth," I replied. It took Richard 6 weeks. What he found made my blood run cold. My parents had opened 4 credit cards in my name. My name, my social security number, my forged signature. Total balance, $127,000. They'd been making minimum payments using money I was sending them, creating a perfect circle of theft. Marcus had taken out a $142,000 business loan in my name, using my credit score, which was perfect 847, to secure favorable terms. The business had failed and the loan was in default. Collection agencies were calling a number I didn't recognize, which I later learned was a phone my parents had set up in my name. Jennifer had listed me as a co-signer on her mortgage without my knowledge. Somehow she'd managed to forge documents that put me on the hook for her $780,000 home loan. She defaulted, my assets were at risk. In total, my family had stolen my identity to fraudulently obtain $1,049,000 in credit and loans. They'd destroyed my credit in the background while I maintained what I thought was a perfect score. They'd put my assets, my career, and my future at risk. And they'd done it all while calling me a disappointment. Richard looked at me across his desk, his expression grim. "Rebecca, this is criminal fraud. Identity theft, forgery, loan fraud. This is federal offense territory. You could press charges." "Not yet," I said quietly. "I need to think." I spent that entire weekend in my apartment staring at Richard's report. Part of me wanted to believe there was an explanation, some misunderstanding. Maybe they'd meant to ask me and forgot. Maybe they thought I'd agreed to something I hadn't. But I knew better. The forged signatures were too consistent. The secrecy too deliberate. They'd known exactly what they were doing. On Monday morning I did 3 things. First, I contacted the credit bureaus and froze my credit. I filed fraud reports for every account I hadn't opened. I initiated disputes that would take months to resolve but would eventually clear my name. Second, I contacted an attorney who specialized in family law and financial crimes. I retained her on a $50,000 retainer and gave her Richard's complete report. "I want options," I told her. "All of them." Third, I set up a trust. I transferred $15 million of my assets into an irrevocable trust that my family could never touch no matter what happened. I protected myself. And then I waited. The explosion came 3 months later, in March 2023, at Jennifer's daughter's birthday party. It was one of those over-the-top events that Instagram influencers throw. A winter wonderland theme in Jennifer's backyard, complete with fake snow, ice sculptures, and a white pony for the kids to ride. The party cost at least $40,000. I knew because I understood event planning costs and every detail screamed expense. I arrived in my Honda wearing a sweater from J.Crew Factory. Jennifer greeted me at the door with a hug that felt performative, the kind you give when other guests are watching. Rebecca. I'm so glad you could make it. Oh, you drove yourself? I thought maybe you'd Uber since parking is tight, but I guess that's not in your budget, right? I smiled. The Honda fits fine. The party was full of Jennifer's friends, all of them in that upper-middle-class bubble where success is measured by visible consumption. The women compared their Cartier love bracelets. The men discussed their golf club memberships. The children wore designer clothes that cost more than my entire outfit. I found my parents holding court near the dessert table. Mom was telling a story about Jennifer's recent kitchen renovation. $95,000, all Viking and Sub-Zero appliances. Dad was laughing, his face flushed with pride. When Mom saw me, her expression shifted slightly. Not quite disappointment, but something close. The look you give someone you're vaguely embarrassed to be related to. Rebecca, honey. You look comfortable. Thanks, Mom. Jennifer was just telling us about her promotion. She's now the head of nursing at Johns Hopkins. Isn't that wonderful? That's great, Jen. Marcus arrived late, pulling up in his Porsche with a roar that turned heads. He bounded over to our group, all energy and confidence. Sorry I'm late. Client meeting ran long. You know how it is when you're closing a major deal. He didn't know how it was. I closed deals worth more than his annual salary every single week. But I nodded politely. The afternoon progressed. I watched my family in their element, surrounded by the wealth and success they'd built. Much of it unknowingly on the foundation I'd provided. I watched them network, name drop, and perform their prosperity. And I felt nothing. That evening, I was helping clean up in the kitchen when I overheard my parents talking in the dining room. They didn't know I was there. I worry about Rebecca, Mom said. She's 31 now and she hasn't achieved anything. No husband, no house, no career prospects. She made her choices, Dad replied. We offered to connect her with people, but she insisted on that government job. Some people just don't have ambition. And she never helps the family financially. Jennifer and Marcus contribute to family events, but Rebecca just shows up empty-handed. My hands stopped moving. I stood frozen, holding a stack of plates, listening to my mother describe me as someone who never helps financially. I had given them $847,000. I had paid their mortgage for 8 years. I had saved Dad's business. I had funded Mom's expansion. And they thought I never helped. I set the plates down carefully, very carefully, because I didn't trust myself not to throw them. I walked out of the house without saying goodbye. I sat in my Honda in Jennifer's driveway for 20 minutes, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. This was the moment I'd been avoiding for 8 years. The moment when I had to decide. Do I keep hiding? Do I keep funding their lifestyle while they judge mine? Do I keep being invisible? Or do I step into the light? I drove home and spent the entire night reviewing Richard's forensic report, my attorney's analysis, and my own financial records. I compiled everything into a comprehensive document that told the complete story. My secret success, my years of support, and their financial fraud. On Monday morning, I called a meeting with my attorney, Sarah Martinez. I'm ready, I told her. I want to cut off all support, file fraud charges, and protect my assets completely. Sarah nodded. This will destroy your relationship with your family. You understand that? They destroyed it first. I'm just making it official. We spent the next 2 weeks preparing. Sarah filed fraud reports with federal authorities. We documented everything for potential criminal prosecution. Though I told Sarah I wanted that as leverage, not my first choice. I wanted the option to press charges, but I wanted them to face consequences through other means first. I contacted my bank and set up a meeting with my relationship manager. I need to cancel all automatic transfers to these accounts, I said, handing her a list. Effective immediately. These have been running for 8 years, Ms. Anderson? Yes. They're ending now. May I ask why? Just for our records. They're no longer needed, I said simply. I also contacted my LLC administrator and dissolved the shell companies I'd used to fund my parents' business and Mom's showroom. I withdrew from every trust, every anonymous donation, every scholarship fund. Finally, I did the hardest thing. I withdrew the $847,000 trust I'd established for my parents' retirement. They didn't know about it. It was my backup plan, my safety net for them when they got older. I'd been planning to surprise them with it someday. Now I moved every dollar into my own protected accounts. By the end of the second week, I dismantled 8 years of financial support in 14 days. Every payment, every donation, every safety net, gone. And then I waited for them to notice. It took 72 hours. On Thursday evening, I was at my apartment reviewing briefing documents for a Friday meeting when my phone rang. Mom's name lit up the screen. I let it ring twice before answering. Hello. Rebecca. Mom's voice was shrill, panicked. What did you do? What did you do to us? I leaned back in my chair, my voice calm. I'm not sure what you mean. The mortgage payment bounced. The bank called saying our automatic payment was declined. And Dad's business account. The investor withdrew everything. Rebecca, what is happening? I'm still not following, Mom. Don't play dumb. The bank said the payments were coming from some LLC and now they've stopped. Do you know anything about this? I paused for a long moment. Actually, yes. I know everything about it. Silence on the other end. Mom, do you remember the conversation I overheard at Jennifer's party? About how I never help financially? What? You told Dad I never contribute to the family. That I show up empty-handed. That I have no ambition and no success. Rebecca, I didn't mean. Let me tell you what I've actually been doing for the past 8 years. My voice was steel now. I've paid your mortgage. Every single month. $3,200 76 times. That's $307,200. I've paid your property taxes. Your homeowner's insurance. Your utility bills. I've covered car repairs, medical copays, and vacation packages you thought you won. I heard her breathing, rapid and shallow. When Dad's business nearly went bankrupt, I invested $250,000 to save it. When you wanted to expand your showroom, I paid the entire $180,000 cost. I've funded family events, birthday parties, and Christmas gifts. Over 8 years, I've given this family $847,000. That's not possible. You don't have that kind of money. Actually, Mom, I'm a senior partner at Meridian Capital Management. I manage a portfolio worth $847 million. My personal net worth is $23 million. I've been successful beyond anything you imagined. I just chose not to tell you. Another silence, longer this time. But why would you hide that from us? Because I wanted to know if you'd value me without it. And I got my answer at Jennifer's party. You don't value me. You're embarrassed by me. You think I'm a disappointment. Rebecca, no. Also, Mom, I hired a forensic accountant. Should I tell you what he found? I heard her breath catch. 4 credit cards in my name that I didn't open. Balance. $127,000. A business loan Marcus took out using my identity. $142,000. And Jennifer's mortgage, which lists me as a co-signer on forged documents. $780,000. In total, my family committed $1,049,000 in identity fraud against me. We were going to tell you. You committed federal crimes. Identity theft, loan fraud, forgery. I have documentation of everything. My attorney has already filed initial fraud reports. Would you like to know what the penalties are for identity theft? Rebecca, please. We're family. Family. I laughed, and it sounded bitter even to me. Family doesn't steal. Family doesn't forge signatures. Family doesn't commit fraud and then call the victim a disappointment. What do you want? I don't want anything, Mom. I've already taken everything back. Every payment is canceled. Every trust is dissolved. Every anonymous donation has ended. You're on your own now. You can't do this to us. The mortgage is due in 2 weeks. Then I suggest you pay it. You're both employed. You have income. Figure it out the way everyone else does. But we can't afford. You could afford it before I started helping. You can afford it again now. Rebecca, please. Let's talk about this. Come to dinner this weekend and we'll... No. What? I said no, Mom. I'm done. Done hiding, done helping, and done being your disappointment daughter while secretly funding your lifestyle. Your father needs to talk to you. Put him on. There was fumbling, muffled conversation. Then Dad's voice, tight with anger. Rebecca, your mother is very upset. I don't know what you think you're doing, but this is unacceptable. What's unacceptable, Dad, is that you committed identity theft. What's unacceptable is that you called me unambitious while I was paying your bills. What's unacceptable is that you let me be the family scapegoat when I was the one holding everything together. We didn't ask for your help. You didn't ask, you just took. Literally. You opened credit cards in my name. You forged my signature. You stole my identity and destroyed my credit while I was actively giving you hundreds of thousands of dollars. We had no choice. We were drowning. You had choices, Dad. You could have asked me for help. You could have valued me instead of judging me. You could have treated me like a daughter instead of a disappointment. This is emotional manipulation. No, Dad. This is consequences. You committed crimes and I'm protecting myself. I've already moved all my assets into protected trusts. I've filed fraud reports. And I've retained an attorney who specializes in financial crimes. If I choose to press charges, you're looking at federal prison time. You wouldn't do that to your own family. Try me. My voice was ice. You have two options. Option 1. You confess to the fraud, work with credit bureaus to clear my name, and accept full responsibility for the debts you created. You do this quietly and completely. Option 2. I press charges and you deal with federal prosecutors. Choose wisely. The line went quiet except for Dad's heavy breathing. And Dad, one more thing. That text you sent me last month, you're selfish and dead to me. I replied, okay. I meant it. Unless you make this right, we're done. All of us. I hung up. My hands were shaking, but this time it was from relief, not anger. 8 years of silence ended in one 15-minute phone call. My phone immediately started ringing again. I declined the call. It rang again. Declined. Text messages started flooding in. Mom, Dad, then Jennifer, then Marcus. I turned my phone to do not disturb and poured myself a glass of wine. I'd done it. I'd stepped into the light. The next 72 hours were chaos. My phone logged 147 missed calls from various family members. My voicemail filled up completely. Text messages came in desperate waves. Mom, please call me. We need to talk about this. We can fix this. Dad, you're being unreasonable. We're your family. Jennifer, what is Mom talking about? She says you've been secretly rich? This is insane. Marcus, you need to calm down and think rationally. Whatever Mom and Dad did, we can work it out. I responded to none of them. Instead, I focused on work. I had a major client presentation on Friday. A $340 million portfolio restructuring for a tech executive. I delivered it flawlessly, closed the deal, and earned Meridian a $4.8 million management fee. My boss, Catherine Chin, pulled me aside afterward. Rebecca, that was exceptional work. The client specifically requested you continue as lead manager. Thank you, Catherine. You seem different lately. More present. Is everything okay? I smiled. Everything is better than it's been in years. On Saturday, the first real consequence hit my family. Dad's construction business had been surviving on the capital I'd injected in 2019. When I withdrew my investment, pulled out through my LLC, the business account dropped from $180,000 to $12,000 overnight. They had ongoing projects, payroll due, and vendor payments scheduled. Dad called suppliers to ask for extended payment terms. They refused. He tried to get a business line of credit, but his credit score, destroyed by the fraudulent loans he'd taken, meant denials everywhere. By Monday, he had to lay off half his crew. Mom's interior design business faced similar problems. The showroom renovation I'd funded had been her big expansion move. Now the lease payment was due, $8,500 a month, and she didn't have the client base to support it. The anonymous donor who'd paid for everything had disappeared. She called 3 times on Monday alone. I didn't answer. On Tuesday, Jennifer showed up at my apartment. I watched her through the peephole, deciding whether to open the door. She was wearing Lululemon and holding a Starbucks cup, her face tight with stress. I opened the door. We need to talk, Jennifer said, pushing past me into the apartment. Hello to you too, Jen. She spun around and I saw she'd been crying. Is it true? Everything Mom told me? You've been secretly rich this whole time. I've been successful, yes. And you've been paying for everything? For years. Yes. Why didn't you tell us? I stared at her. Why didn't I tell the family that constantly judged me, pitted me, and treated me like a failure? Why didn't I reveal my success to the people who called me unambitious? Gee, Jen, I wonder. That's not fair. You put me as a co-signer on your mortgage without my knowledge. You forged documents that made me financially liable for your $780,000 house. How is that fair? Her face crumpled. I didn't think you'd find out. And we needed someone with good credit. So you committed fraud. It's not like that. Jennifer, that's exactly what it is. You falsified legal documents. You put my assets at risk. And you did it while looking down on me for driving a Honda. She sank onto my couch, crying harder now. I didn't know. About your job, your money, any of it. If I'd known. If you'd known, you would have asked me for more. That's why I didn't tell you. That's not true. Isn't it? You're here right now asking me to help Mom and Dad, aren't you? She went quiet. Jen, I loved you all enough to support you in secret. I gave you nearly $1 million over 8 years. I asked for nothing in return except, I don't know, basic respect? The benefit of the doubt? And I couldn't even get that. What do you want us to do? Take responsibility. Confess to the fraud. Clear my name. Accept the consequences of your choices. But Mom and Dad's businesses are not my problem anymore. She left 20 minutes later, still crying. 3 weeks after my phone call with Mom, my attorney Sarah called. Rebecca, your parents' attorney reached out. They want to negotiate a settlement. No settlement. We discussed this. They confess to the fraud and clear my name or I press charges. They're offering to pay back the fraudulent accounts in monthly installments. Sarah, they don't have the money to pay it back. They can barely cover their mortgage now that I'm not funding it. This is a stalling tactic. What do you want me to tell them? Tell them they have 72 hours to contact all credit bureaus, all lenders and all collection agencies with a full confession of fraud. Tell them they have 72 hours to sign affidavits releasing me from any financial liability for accounts I didn't open. Tell them 72 hours or I file criminal charges with federal prosecutors. Sarah paused. You're certain about this? I've never been more certain of anything. 68 hours later, I received a package via courier. Inside were signed affidavits from both parents confessing to identity theft, fraudulent credit applications and loan fraud. Attached were letters to all 3 credit bureaus releasing me from liability. Also in the package was a handwritten note from Mom. Rebecca, we're doing what you asked. We're taking responsibility. I hope someday you can forgive us. We never meant to hurt you. We got in over our heads and made terrible choices. I'm so sorry. I read the note 3 times. Then I filed it with Sarah's office for the legal record. I didn't respond. Over the next 2 months, the consequences played out like falling dominoes. Dad's construction business declared bankruptcy in May. He had to liquidate equipment and close the company he'd owned for 23 years. He took a job as a project manager at another firm, making $68,000 a year, a third of what he'd made as an owner. Mom downsized her showroom, moving to a smaller space with a lease she could afford. She let go of her assistant and went back to being a one-woman operation. Her income dropped from $140,000 a year to about $60,000. They had to refinance their house, taking a higher interest rate due to their damaged credit. Their monthly payment went from $3,200 to $4,100. They were struggling. Marcus called me in June. Rebecca, I know you're mad at Mom and Dad, but this is getting out of hand. They're really suffering. They committed crimes, Marcus. Against me. And you took out a $142,000 loan in my name. You're hardly innocent here. I thought you'd agreed to co-sign. You forged my signature. I have the documents. Should I send them to you? He went quiet. Marcus, you made $2.3 million when your startup went public. You drive a Porsche. You live in Georgetown. Why aren't you helping them? That's different. No, it's not. You have money. They need money. Your family. Help them. But I have my own expenses. Exactly. So did I. But I helped anyway for 8 years while you all judged me. Now it's your turn. I hung up. In July, Jennifer's marriage hit the rocks. Apparently, the financial stress of their lifestyle, the mortgage I was no longer secretly helping with, the credit card debt they'd accumulated, had created friction. They separated. By August, she'd filed for divorce. She left me a voicemail. I hope you're happy. My life is falling apart and you don't even care. Some sister you are. I didn't respond to that either. It's been 6 months since I cut off my family. My life has changed completely. I'm no longer hiding. I drove my Honda to the dealership and traded it in for a Tesla Model S, Arctic blue, fully loaded. I moved from my modest Arlington apartment to a penthouse in the wharf with Potomac River views. I started dating again openly as someone with success and wealth. At work I'm thriving. Catherine promoted me to managing partner. My portfolio is now worth $1.2 billion. I hired an assistant. I joined the board of directors for 2 nonprofits focused on financial literacy and women in finance. I'm living openly as myself for the first time in 8 years. My family has tried to reconnect. Mom sends birthday cards. Dad texts occasionally with neutral updates about the weather or sports. Jennifer sent a long email in September apologizing for everything and asking if we could start over. I haven't responded to any of it. Not because I'm cruel, but because I'm protecting the version of myself I finally found. The version that doesn't shrink to make others comfortable. The version that doesn't hide success to avoid judgment. The version that won't be exploited. Last week I got a letter from Mom. A real letter handwritten on nice stationery. Rebecca, it's been 6 months. I understand why you cut us off. We failed you in every possible way. We judged you, exploited you, and hurt you. We committed crimes against you. And then we acted like you were the problem. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for money. I'm not asking for anything except the chance to tell you that I'm proud of you. I always should have been proud of you. You built an incredible career. You achieved extraordinary success. And you did it while supporting a family that gave you nothing but criticism in return. You deserved better from us. You deserved parents who celebrated you, not ones who diminished you. I can't change the past, but I want you to know that I see you now. Really see you. I love you, Mom. I read the letter sitting in my penthouse, watching the sunset over the Potomac. I cried for the first time in 6 months. But I still didn't respond. Maybe someday I will. Maybe someday I'll be ready to let them back into my life, to build something new from the ashes of what burned down. But not today. Today I'm simply living as myself. Rebecca Anderson, senior partner at Meridian Capital Management. Rebecca Anderson, who manages over $1 billion. Rebecca Anderson, who drives a Tesla and lives in a penthouse and doesn't apologize for her success. Rebecca Anderson, who learned that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is say, okay, and walk away. My phone buzzes. It's Catherine. Board meeting at 9 a.m. Big new client. $500M portfolio. Your lead. Congratulations. I smile and text back, I'll be there. I pour myself a glass of wine and stand at the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, my family is struggling with consequences they created. Somewhere out there, they're learning that actions have cost. And somewhere in here, in this penthouse I earned, in this life I built, in this success I no longer hide, I'm finally free. My dad texted, "You're selfish and dead to me." I replied, okay. And I've never been more at peace.